Kia ora koto. Well, my name is Stefan Lukosz, one of the general chairs of this IEEE VR 2022 conference. And well, we are already on our second day of the main program, and I really hope that you all enjoy the conference, the different paper session, workshops, panels, the virtual reality experiences, and the keynotes. Because we are now looking forward to the second keynote by Aliesha Staples. Aliesha Staples is one of the founders, or is the founder and director of StaplesVR, sorry for that, which is an emerging technology company here in New Zealand that has had a really interesting development over the last years. Aliesha has worked with a lot of companies, was involved in a lot of movie productions. She has worked with Warner Brothers, Paramount Pictures, also the New Zealand television station TVNZ and ABC, which she has won several awards, and her company is really well known and is doing really cool stuff in our field. And I really look forward to her keynote. And well, without further ado, well, I pass the floor to Aliesha, and I really look forward to your keynote. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks, Stephen. Cool. So, hi, everyone. I'm just going to jump on to sharing my screen and get this underway. Cool. So my keynote is going to be a little bit different, I think, to what the rest of the conference has been like. In the fact, I think the conference is more academic based, and I don't come from the academic world. So I hope I can give you some lighthearted relief on what it's like to run an emerging tech company and try and be commercially viable in a space that seems to move faster than anything I've even seen before. So hopefully you learn a little bit from it, you get a little bit of motivation, and keen for anyone just to flip questions over, and I can go a bit more in depth into some different parts of this talk, because there's a lot going on. We've been around for a little while, and I want to make sure I answer your questions on the bits that are most relevant for you. Cool. Cool. So firstly, who am I? So I'm the founder and CEO of StaplesVR. My background is actually in film and television. So I got into this through innovation in movie making. I'm also an independent director. So I sit on the board of Television New Zealand, an education board that's helping the New Zealand government look at how we can teach people differently in this space, and also a couple of startups. I'm an AR/VR producer in what I like to call my spare time, which at the moment is not much. I'm also the co-founder of Click Studios and the Click Foundation. So Click Studios, which I'll go a little bit into further in my talk, is a clustering co-working space that was designed to help startups skip all the pain points that we had as a startup in this space by opening a facility that has all of the access to the cameras and the tablets and all the things that you need to test and try and become a commercial entity in this space. And a futurist, so I'm never stopped looking at what is the next innovation and what can I use to kind of tell stories and solve business problems. So StaplesVR, this is a snapshot of who StaplesVR are today. My keynote is going to be about how we got here and also what the next year looks like for us. So we're a studio that makes content, and we originally started as an entertainment brand, and we now solve business problems using this technology. And that looks anything like aviation training, military simulators, building cameras for different applications, 360 video, 5G applications, you name it, we're kind of sitting in that space. And this is some of our previous work, and I'm going to go into a little bit more detail later in this talk about what we actually did on each one of these productions, but they're all very unique and all very different. So Sweet Tooth and Cowboy Bebop were as a result of COVID hitting New Zealand and a really specific use case that they needed solved with our borders closed with a local company because they were unable to access talent anywhere else in the world. So enter New Zealand innovation and what we did for them. And Mission Impossible Fallout, that's a film that was shot in New Zealand a couple of years ago, and we developed a 360 camera system for Tom Cruise's helicopter, so you could see during the chase sequences that he actually flew that helicopter And part of the brief was that the canyon he's flying through is unsurvivable. So if you crash, we will not be trying to get you back. So it was really important to us to develop a system that didn't require any of our team to be in that helicopter at the time. So I'll show you a bit about that project a bit later on. And this is just a really kind of broad snapshot of the types of things that we work on. So top left is some experiences for kids in the Children's Hospital here in New Zealand. Middle at the top, you've got an augmented reality experience for doctors who are educating their patients on different illnesses. Top right is a virtual reality experience, which had 6 degrees of freedom for the Paralympics New Zealand. So that was designed to help kids experience what it's like to have a visual disability and try and play football. We've got a snapshot of our aviation simulator, a snapshot from our military stuff, and this main image in the bottom right is a recent experience that we built for Antarctic Heritage Trust, which is available on Steam if you want to go and check out Scott's Hut down in Antarctica. Okay, so how do you actually, what is the foundation of our company, and how we actually convince ourselves to constantly take that leap of faith? In some of the quotes that we have scattered around our office kind of fall into this category. So innovative quotes and things that kind of push us to try new things. So if you're not failing every now and again, it's a sign you're not doing anything innovative. We check ourselves against this quote all the time. If we're too comfortable, if we've gotten really comfortable with something, we will go and look for something new that we can try and solve. So we like being on the kind of leading edge of comfortable and uncomfortable. So how did we get into it? How do you even decide to make a commercial entity in a space that is just so rapidly developing? So I've split this into a couple of different avenues, and the first one is called Pivot One. So most of my experience was in the film sector, as I mentioned earlier, and I was based overseas. So I spent 8 years outside of New Zealand honing my craft in new technology. And that looked like things like drones and camera stabilizers and cable cams and any kind of new technology that helped the film sector. And in 2014, I moved back to New Zealand and I had a look at what did the creative tech sector look like here at the time and where could I go to get a job. And this is a snapshot of how I felt. So there was no company in the country that had a handheld stabilizer, which was actually my job at the time. I was a gimbal technician. There was also very few drone companies of large scale that could lift cinema cameras. And what happened was I ended up being forced into starting my own company out of necessity, because essentially my career didn't exist here. So what I did was I brought in some handheld stabilizers, which is this image on the left, some heavy lifting drones, which at the time were so new that the New Zealand Civil Aviation Authority hadn't actually written the rules on what you could and couldn't do with these heavy lifting craft at the time. And a passion of mine that is kind of been spread throughout my career, which is education. So I set up a company that you could come and learn for free how to use this technology, and you could be a student or you could be an industry professional that wanted to get into it, and you could come and practice and play with it and break it and rebuild it in our facility. And what that did was create a really disruptive rental model where we were training technicians that would use our gear. They would go out and buy their own, and we would become their support network that would supply in any copters that went down. We had a replacement for them. So we're still the only dry hire drone company in New Zealand where you can come and hire a massive drone off us. So that's what our business was originally. It was emerging tech specifically focused on the film sector. I'm just going to play a really quick video of what that kind of innovation did to the film sector. So what we had done, oops, sorry, not show you that again. So what we had done is we'd rapidly changed the way that the film sector captured what used to cost tens and sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars to capture. So we replaced these really large crews and really expensive systems with a really innovative and cost-effective solution, which our industry didn't have here before. So when a large-scale production came to New Zealand, they would bring in the crew and the techs that could operate this stuff. And we got really comfortable there. We were doing really well. When we started, there was you'd go on film sets and there'd be no gimbals. By the time we'd finished every film set or every TV production that you went on set, there was a handheld gimbal or a drone of some description. So it brings through our innovative quotes, right? Like when we get comfortable, we're clearly not innovating. And when you're not failing, you're also not trying new things. So that's where this quote kind of came into the foundation of our company, where failure is an option here. If things are not failing, you're not innovating enough. And that's a core part of our business. So we were too comfortable. So what we did was we went into pivot 2, which was venturing into the unknown. What new technology in the last 2 years since we'd been based in New Zealand had come onto the market that we didn't even know of because we'd been in this bubble down in our part of the world. So we packed our bags and we went to America, and we went to have a look at what new technology was coming that could change the face of how you tell stories and change filmmaking, how we know it. And what that looked like to our company was things like 360 cameras, having a post-production facility, and again, that education arm of teaching people about this content. What we became quite known for was having technology that no one actually knew what to do with it. That's what we did with gimbals and drones, and that's very much what we found with 360 camera technology. When we brought it into New Zealand, there's no editing software to stitch this stuff together. There wasn't even really any 360 cameras. We had to custom build everything from the ground up. And once we'd done that, you're trying to sell that into clients where they're not even really sure where users would go to watch this stuff. And at the time, headsets are really kind of entry-level phones strapped to your face. So it wasn't a really good viewing experience either. But that's the place where we thought, let's innovate here. We can definitely see some potential. And what happened was some really innovative and interesting projects came to us because of this, because of our investment in this space. We had one of the first Nokia Ozo cameras. I'm not sure if you guys remember that, but they were $100,000 bricks essentially that had 8K camera lenses in them, all feeding into one memory card, which at the time was revolutionary. Like everything is going into one memory card. This is amazing. I don't have 8 memory cards that I have to manage, but it had a $100,000 price tag. So there wasn't really many companies at the time that were playing around in that space. But we brought one of those cameras in. We had one of the original Jaunt 1 cameras, which is now probably the biggest paperweight that we have in our company. Again, $120,000 price tag. So it was quite a big risk for a small company at the bottom of the world to start playing around in this space. But these are some of the projects that came in on the back of it. So we'd had the Nokia Ozo camera. I think we were one of the first 5 companies to purchase that. We had it in the country for a week when Warner Brothers rang Nokia in Finland and said, we need one of these Nokia cameras. And they turned around and said, well, there's only a handful available, and one of them is 15 minutes down the road from you in Auckland. So that kind of got us our first kind of handshake into a big scale 360 live action virtual reality experience. And what we did for them was create their marketing experience where you could put on a headset and you could be in a tank and the megalodon is swimming around trying to eat you. In the middle here is another one of our innovations. So we built the first underwater live streaming 5G 360 camera for the Commonwealth Games when they were over in Australia. So you could go into this 8 meter by 8 meter dome and you could watch the live stream of different experiences, from being on the track to being underwater of those comm games, all live streamed over 5G, which at the time had never been done before. So for that, we had to develop not only the camera, but also the backing technology that could take that feed and play it and kind of redistribute it into that dome. You've got the Mission Impossible experience. So that was where we customized a Nokia Ozo by ripping it to pieces and rebuilding it so that it could withstand below 0 temperatures and be mounted inside of a helicopter without giving you your shaky experience. And also we worked on the Will Smith adaptation of Aladdin. But what started happening at this point was we went from an entertainment company that was focused on entertaining people, and our outcome was that people had a good time while they watched this content, to looking at how we could use this technology to change how people behave, to change how people look at the world. And that's when our company stopped purely being an entertainment brand, and rather looking at how can we use this technology to tell stories that will kind of be heroic and do different things for the end users and change the way people behave. So this is Eli. Eli's story is that he caught a virus, which it is even more topic at the moment. But at this point in time, it was just a normal virus. Lots of kids in his school caught it as well, including his twin brother. He went downhill really fast, and the virus attacked his spinal cord above his neck. So he was paralyzed instantly for life from the neck down. He was living in New Zealand's Children's Hospital, which is in Auckland, which is at the top of the North Island. And he's from the bottom of the North Island, a small rural town. And his mental health was declining because he hadn't been home for such a long period of time. And he couldn't see an outcome where he would get to go home anytime soon. So we were given the challenge of, can we create an innovative solution to empower him to see hope at the end of the tunnel? And what that did to our company, unbeknownst to us at the time, has completely changed the way that we want to use this technology and develop different cameras. So I'm going to show you a quick video of Eli and Eli's story, because it's a pivotal point in our company.
Eli's been unwell for 7 months roughly now. He was fine at school on a Friday afternoon, and then the next morning he woke up feeling a little bit funny. He deteriorated quite a bit by the next day. Since then it's just been a whirlwind. We were choppered to Wellington Hospital, and then within 24 hours flown up to Starship.
Children with the type of illness that Eli has, they're not able to get the messages from the brain to the muscles. Unfortunately, in Eli's case, he's actually unable to tell his lungs to work either. And so we've had to do that for him, and he has a machine that's able to move his lungs and breathe for him as well.
Probably the biggest challenges that we've faced so far is the divide that we have in it amongst our family. We're at either ends of the North Island at the moment, and generally I'm at home with the two boys, Isaac and Jesse, and Tracy and Eli are up here. And although I come up every week, it is hard. It's hard for Tracy to be away from the other boys, and it's hard when Eli's going through some bad times to be away from Eli.
And it's hard for Eli to be away from them as well.
Yep.
He definitely is missing the family time together. The boys are just Dad's little helpers. You know, every weekend or after school, anytime they can get out there, they're out on the farm helping. He quite often says to me, "Oh, I just really miss the farm," or, you know, "I really miss my home." But also his friends, his school.
This virtual reality experience is going to open Eli's old world to his new world. So if we can all of a sudden take him out of that world and bring him into his old world through this virtual reality, we hope or believe that it's going to be just eye-opening for him, and it's just going to be another incentive for him to try hard at the things he can try hard at, which will improve his quality of life.
Effectively just bringing home to him.
So this is quite an old technology. Like those 360 cameras are just GoPros all strapped together, and the headset is just a phone chucked in. And what it really made our company look at was, wow, look at the outcome that this had for this one particular child. How can we change what we're doing to deliver solutions that have a heroic outcome, is what we call them. And so post Eli's story, we looked at, well, how can we scale this so this can help more than one child? We can't obviously go around and make everyone bespoke solutions. So what we do at the moment with New Zealand's Children's Hospital is we stream the kids using a real-time live stream to different locations around the country. So these examples that you're seeing here, the two boys in the wheelchair, they're at what we call Kelly Tarleton's, which is a aquatic museum. They're in with the penguins playing football with them, and they're real penguins. It's all real-time 360 stream. The boy on the right is sitting in the front row of Disney on Ice when they came to New Zealand, and the boy bottom left is at the zoo. So using this technology, we could give these kids the experiences they can't leave the hospital for multiple of reasons, which during COVID has been even more important to give them these types of experiences. And so this is where our company really started looking at, can we start building cameras? Can we start building headsets that actually make this more accessible? And one of the next projects that came in immediately after Eli was a project called Escape My House. And the brief we were given was we had a production company that had been asked by the fire service to build an innovative campaign that would teach kids how to escape a burning building. So they came to us and said, could you build a fireproof 360 camera? And could we put it in a house and burn it down? And for us, it's an advantage of innovating from New Zealand. There's not many hospitals that will let you walk in and put kids in VR. Yes, it has to all be controlled, and yes, you need your infection control, but it's the actual getting a yes from that entity and being able to walk in there and actually make a difference. I don't think there's many fire services in the world that would say, I'll find you a house, we'll provide you all the resources you need to let you burn it down if you can build the camera. So we thought, why not? We looked at what cameras were available at the time, and did we need to build something from scratch, or could we customize something? And using a bit of Kiwi ingenuity, we went to the local hardware store and we bought everything in that store that said that it was fireproof or flame retardant or could be heat proof in some description. We blew up a couple of barbecues testing out what was the best material to use as a casing. And we landed on using GoPros, which ironically are known for overheating even on a normal day. So GoPro actually reached out after they saw this experience and asked us how we managed to keep their cameras from overheating inside of a burning building. But what we did is we stripped all the plastic off these GoPros. We ripped off the lenses and replaced them with 180-degree glass lenses so that we could get away with less cameras, so therefore less likely to have a failure. So it was 3 cameras with 3 glass lenses inside of a fibrous concrete housing. And then we played around with a few different ways that we could keep the camera cool, because the burning point of the memory card was lower than the heat expected to come from the fire. So we played around with dry ice. We looked at a whole lot of different ways we could run coolant through the camera. And what we landed on was Play-Doh. So I'm not sure if we call Play-Doh the same all around the world, but it's a kid's malleable clay-like material. And we found that when you freeze it, it is still malleable and it doesn't expand or retract based on heat, and it doesn't create any condensation. So the secret ingredient in our fireproof camera is, and we chose blue because it looked the coolest, but blue Play-Doh is what kept it cool and protected those memory cards when it was in the building. So I'm just going to play this, but I'm going to talk to you guys as it plays. So I'll just mute it. Is it just gives a really good kind of example of what this camera looked like and how we used it. And funnily enough, after this experience was launched online, there was quite a few VR forums where people were trying to debunk it and show how it was fake, and it was CG flames and it wasn't real. And our team would pipe up in there and go, no, it is real. We built it from New Zealand, and we just kind of get ignored and no one thought we were real and this can't be real. So we made this video to kind of show that like it's a real camera. It really survived. It still exists. We use these cameras for other things now. It doesn't look so pretty, but it was very functional. So this was us like kind of going down to the fire training facility and testing out all of the different lenses and seeing what we could capture. And this is what it looks like from one lens looking at the flame. So it's all live action 360 footage. And what they did with it is they put it into an online website, an interactive website where the kids could move their cursor around and click on all the different things and try and get out of the building before it burnt down. So you go to escapemyhouse.co.nz, which I believe is still live if anyone wants to go and try it out. And what it does, I think you've got 2.5 minutes before the fire becomes unsurvivable. And the whole point of this experience was to push adults and like families to sit down and actually make these escape plans before they were actually needed. So hopefully the outcome from this experience was that a few lives were saved just by taking the time to think about how you would escape from a burning building. And then I've got a behind the scenes video that I'll show you that explains this application a bit better.
Fire is deadly fast. Once it's started, it's too late to plan your escape. As a result, lives are tragically being lost every year. Despite this, more than 2/3 of New Zealanders don't have an escape plan because they think it won't happen to me. To drive them to take action, we'd have to do something shocking. So for the first time, we put New Zealanders inside a real house fire. We fireproofed 360 cameras and set them throughout the house. Then we burned it to the ground. The terrifying footage became the basis for Escape My House, an immersive VR experience like no other. You step into your lounge to find a fire has taken hold. The temperature skyrockets and choking black smoke floods the room. As the fire rampages, obstacles start to hinder your escape. The window is jammed. The front door is deadlocked. If you haven't planned for this, your home quickly becomes a death trap. The experience ends with an unexpected twist, a street view of your home in flames, and one final haunting thought. You got out alive, but did the rest of your family? Our escape planner tool then provided the solution, enabling families to create their own escape plan. The project didn't just challenge the thinking of a nation, it set fire to apathy across the globe. More than 9 million people took part in the VR experience, and over 20,000 New Zealanders made their own escape plan, all within the first week. Long-held beliefs were confronted with reality. A fire can happen to you. And if you and your family want to make it out alive, you need a plan. Now, New Zealanders do.
Cool. So these projects, each one of them had a unique innovation challenge that required us to do something we'd never been done before. And then we started getting comfortable, even though they were leading edge, even though we hadn't particularly solved that exact problem before. We were sitting in this 360 video space and we felt like we could do more with the technology. So my next quote is, "The only way to discover the limits of possible is to go beyond them into the impossible." So this was when we as a company took on our third pivot, which is where we started looking into interactive, bringing in our 3D modelers, our programmers, and our game development arm, and launching our Click Studios brand, which was our ultimate education portal, which is where we created a co-working space where we wanted all of those companies that are trying to launch AR, MR, VR, all of the acronyms you can imagine into the world, that they had a place they could do that from. So this, again, rapidly changed the way that our company works. And this is a snapshot of some of the growth and some of the projects that we worked on once we moved into this pivot point. So we've done everything from creating what's called a diagnosis academy for doctors, where we teach neurologists how to diagnose different neurological disorders. We've created driving simulators. We've converted MRI scans into 3D models to help doctors and patients interpret real MRI data faster and more accurately. We've created training simulations for working at heights, working in hospitals, working around aircraft. And we also work in the military space, but we work purely in the non-lethal stuff. So we look at accessibility to equipment and defensive training and how we can help using this technology. So the images you see on the top of your screen are of one of our recent projects for the Royal New Zealand Navy, which is training their maintainer how to operate their air-to-sea missile decoy system. So if there's a missile locked onto their ship, they fire this thing and the missile attacks it instead of the ship. So it's really important that this person knows what they're doing and can work under pressure. And that's been us for the last 4 years. So we've really loved it. We've kind of chugged along, and then in 2020, COVID hit, and where we found ourselves was a lot of our clients and companies we work with, their budgets come from their innovation spend, and that's the first thing that kind of stopped when COVID began. So we looked at how can we pivot again? What can we do differently? How can we help our customers save time and money and move their spends from this is our innovation spend where we're going to play in this space into this is our training spend. This is a different function, a different budget. So back to work we went. I'm currently sitting in our New Zealand office. I've got 80 desks around me that are completely empty because everyone is at home. It's very peaceful here, but we just pivoted and we work now completely remotely. New Zealand's response to COVID was world class, which is great, but it does mean we're kind of slightly behind the rest of the world when it comes to our outbreaks. So we're right in the middle of one now. So everyone's working at home, but for a global company, really we were used to that anyway, because all of our meetings and the like were all online anyway. So cyber scanning and SAS. So those are two completely different technologies. Cyber scanning is something that we were asked to solve for the film sector. So right at the beginning of this keynote, I mentioned that Netflix had Cowboy Bebop and Sweet Tooth in the country, and they needed a solution. So one of the problems they had was that the borders had closed and people couldn't get in and out of the country. And for Sweet Tooth, that meant they had a whole lot of kids in New Zealand that were needed to be scanned and have their prosthetics made, but their prosthetics are being made in the States, and normally they would fly the kids there, get their prosthetics made and come back. So what we needed to do was create a human photocopier that could take a forensically accurate scan of these kids, and we can send the scan to the US. They can 3D print in true scale and make the prosthetics and send them over to us. So that was one of the problems we were trying to solve. And the other was for Cowboy Bebop, where they had what their lead actor had hurt himself and was over in the US. So they needed a digital replica of him. And also for any of the stunts in that film, being able to create digital copies of those crew members. So what we created is a cyber scanning machine, which has got 105 cameras that take a simultaneous photo of a person and turn them into a 3D model. So you're able to realistically texture them if you need that realism texture, or you're also able to just take that 3D model element and 3D print it. So this is used for multiple different use cases. Some of our gaming clients use them to create assets in their games, in VR, for high-end video and movie work. They use this for animals and humans. So being able to take a simultaneous photo from that many angles in a controlled lighting environment gives you that highly accurate 3D model. So it's very hard to show what the actual machine looks like because it's really componentry that's built in an 8 meter by 8 meter box. But hopefully that video gives you a bit of an idea. So it's got a whole lot of trees that sit around the person, and each one of those trees is interlocked into the other. And it's sending a feed out to the stitching computer that can take all of those images all at once and turn them into the model. So that was one of the things that we were doing from the film sector space. from current slide. Let me just jump ahead. But what we were doing on the other side was the education and moving our business from a service for hire to a software provider. So what we're doing for the next 12 months is instead of making these bespoke VR solutions for one or two end users, we're looking at how can we move to be a software platform where we can scale all of these solutions. And rather than saving one person's life or one company's problem, we can scale that globally to solve a variety of different problems. So our company is splitting in two over the next 12 months. Our entertainment and movie arm is moving into its own space because we still do all those large scale movie problem solving jobs. We now have a cyber scanning team that are almost full time running that machine now that people realize what it actually does. So creating that skin for like the digital human type companies that need that kind of meta-human skin, and being able to make replicas of really famous people for all sorts of different reasons. That's one like kind of arm of our company, and the other is this now SaaS platform. So hopefully this has given you an interesting snapshot of what it is like to be a commercial entity that's working in this kind of emerging tech space. You constantly have to pivot. You're constantly looking for where is the next thing coming from and what can you use that technology for to do greater good to your clients. Cool. Hopefully I've been on time. Hopefully it's been informative and innovative. I'll stop sharing now and see if there's any question. How did I do, Stephen?
Awesome. Thank you for this great keynote. And yeah, you really touched my heart with the stories and the things that you do. So I had to cry a bit when you showed the story on Eli. So if anyone has seen that, that really was emotional for me. I think that's really impressive what kind of impact you have on society and how you do business and do something good for society. And from what I've seen, a lot of people were impressed by your keynote, and got a few messages on that. So thank you very much for that. There's also has been a few questions. So should we just jump into them and let's see how it goes and whether more comes in? Is that okay for you?
Yes, go for it.
Okay. You answered it a bit, but Tobias, the other co-chair, asked what you would see as a big step for your company in the future that goes beyond the 360 cameras and the capturing.
Yeah. So we were purely 360 about 5 years ago. So that's what our focus was. So for the last 4.5 years, almost 5 years, we've been sitting in that tech solution space. So rather than marketing experiences or experiences that are really designed to push brand awareness, we're looking at that full virtual and augmented production pipeline. So we now have more of our company that is based in game platforms than our film, which is why we're doing that split where we've realized like it's getting a bit out of control now and we need our core focus to be our core focus. So it's kind of the first point in time where we've gone, well, we have this rental company, we have a 360 production arm and a full post-production suite to go with that. But our core focus is actually our programmers and our 3D modelers for our virtual reality and augmented app space. So as much as that presentation looks like that all happened really fast, that's a 9-year period. So it was about 4.5 years ago when we pivoted into game development.
Okay. Well, good luck with the future. That sounds really interesting. You're facing a lot of challenges, but I think you're kind of used to that and looking forward to that. Rico Otono asked what you would think is necessary to connect academia, like most of the people at this conference are from academia, how to connect academia with the commercial sides of the VR fields, because a lot of things that you're doing is actually, there are talks about that here as well, this capturing, but there's two different worlds. Do you think there's a chance for, let's say, the academic world and the business world to work closer together?
100%. I think New Zealand does quite well just in that space, just purely because of our size. Everyone knows each other. So I work quite often with Mark from Auckland Uni, and I mean, I haven't been down to HitLab yet, but very well aware of it, and we all kind of cross-pollinate in what we're doing. Click Studios was supposed to help us as StaplesVR do that in a less commercial way. So Click Studios is a co-working space that's designed as a social enterprise. So it's a not-for-profit. So what that is designed to do is enable universities and students and academics and anyone that already works in the space even to have a safe space to try things out and work closer together. So we have in our space at the moment, for example, we have 3 different universities that are just co-locating their students here, so that they're co-located with industry, and that seems to be working quite well. And then we're doing a bit in the virtual production space. And I see definitely a good way to partner is if we already have the hardware, rather than the universities have to invest in the exact same hardware, especially in virtual production where you're looking at like 20 million plus to set something up. It's actually just working together so that the universities have access to it and can teach their students on industry specific setups, and have those pipelines where we can feed students into commercial work so they can see this is what it actually is like in practice.
Well, that sounds really promising. Honestly, I will at least come back on that, see how we can do this. But I assume a lot of people are listening and will do the same. Ling Wai Tong asks, what do you think is a necessary background somebody needs to have to start working in the VR content production that goes beyond, let's say, or is different to filmmaking background?
Yeah.
What kind of people are you looking for?
Yeah, it's been really difficult trying to scale our producers, because I've kind of learned over time what everything does and how it interlinks to each other. And so it's been really hard for us to find those the producer level. The programmers, the artists and the editors and the filmmakers, they kind of get each other. There's a couple of terminology that means something completely different in each, but they all kind of understand they are creating content at the end of the day. So they can all work together at that level. It's the producers that need to understand the different ways of making content and communicate that to a client without over-promising them and helping their expectations, because most of your clients have seen videos online of, I don't know if you've seen like things like hype reels, like Microsoft HoloLens video when they released the HoloLens. It didn't do anything in that video, but that's the videos we get sent to going, hey, we want to build this and this is what it looks like, and you have to kind of reel them back. So trying to find that talent in that producer space that understand it enough that they can manage expectations and know what's real and what's not real. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, I think it does, I think. Yeah, I think a lot of people are interested with the next question. Unfortunately, someone who hasn't changed his name on Discord, so I would assume his name is Craig. So he says, like, it seems that you have done a lot of things, a lot of different things. And he asked, like, how do you manage to do all these different things, but still focus on some things?
Yeah, I don't know how we do that, to be honest. I think it's we've learnt by osmosis. We've got this gut instinct of what we want to be focusing on and when we want to focus on it. So part of our business is just looking at new technology, and we may not necessarily have worked out if we even want to use it yet. We just need to be aware that it exists. So things like volumetric filmmaking, we're fully across that. We're looking at how we could use it, but we haven't invested in that space yet. And that's been around for a couple of years now. So we're very kind of following along that technology, playing with the different depth sensors, playing around with how we would use it, but we haven't done any commercial projects on it yet because we're just not confident in the way that we could manage a client expectation with that tech. So part of the business is purely R&D and playing around with things and thinking about how you could use this technology. My role in the business is to lead the projects that we have now. So I'm more in the now space. And then we have the people that actually do the doing, right? The ones on the tools. So it just requires a lot of organization and understanding where your skill set sits. Okay. But yeah, it's been a constant struggle, and I do constantly find myself going like this and then having to like converge my thinking back to what's possible. And it is a big part of why we're moving to a SaaS model where we can focus on our own IP rather than constantly working on bespoke projects, which are like, I mean, that industry is like this, it's a supply and demand. You've got to find the clients, you've got to find the tenders and put forward the proposals. Whereas if we're creating our own software for specific industries like aviation, then it's more scalable. So that's kind of what we're focusing on at the moment. Okay,
very interesting. The following question is a bit more on, let's say, the design approach that you're taking in your companies. You showed a lot of examples where you work with different client groups. And Heidi Lukas asks, how involved the target groups like the disabled children and individuals are really part of the development of the products that you're doing, and how do you actually do this?
Yeah, it's actually the main part. The building of it is for us the easy part, and not our main part of the whole project. So we split it into 3 phases, and phase 1 is the chunky bit, which is actually working with the users and working out what are their problems, what are their limitations, and what are their needs. And then we work with our industry experts, which for the medication one, for the kids in hospital, it was actually the play specialists that are currently working with those kids, the kids themselves, their parents, and then the hospital facilitators, and working with all of them around what type of solutions would work, what are some of the problems you could see with each one before you even land on it. So for our aviation ones, we have aviation training experts who sit with our team and develop the UX, the scripts, the storyboards, and everything before we start building. So they're not our interpretation of what the training should be like. They are from industry, and then we rely on their skill set to make sure we've created it properly. Mm-hmm. The other thing that we do is we just partner with our clients. So we kind of sit in their team. So sometimes we'll be based in their office and understanding the day-to-day struggles and what they're trying to solve. Our team ends up knowing a lot of really random information about really random things.
Yes, yeah, well, I think that's also something that a lot of researchers experience in their different product projects. So, yeah. But it's also very rewarding to work with the clients and to really understand what they need and what they want.
Yeah, like one of the examples I'd use is our studio manager was needing to build a simulator for forestry. She needed to build, it was based around how dangerous it is to chop down a tree. And I figured unless you've seen that happen, you can't really even have that conversation. So we actually sent her down to Christchurch, where you are, to go out with Scion to the forest. So Scion is the forestry research agency for New Zealand, and to literally watch a tree fall down, to understand what that is actually like in the real world before you try and simulate that in the virtual world.
Yeah, made a huge difference, I assume.
Yeah.
Yeah. Luciana Nedell asks, what do you think about the fact that HMDs are getting cheaper and cheaper, and Facebook is creating, or Meta is creating something like the metaverse?
Yeah.
What kind of opportunities do you see in that context for new business in virtual reality?
Yeah, it's almost endless at the moment, which comes back to that previous question, which is how do you focus? Because it's just all these keywords, is like NFTs and blockchain and metaverse and this and that, and you could be doing everything left, right, and center, or free roam arcade style games, and so you've got to really kind of go, like, you got to kind of hone in on something. Otherwise, you will get stuck in a vicious circle of just seeing all the opportunity that is out there. For us, because we've been around for a while and we have quite an established client base, we're able to use our service income to sustain our own IP income. So we can make some bigger risks because we've got money coming into the business, cash flow from other revenues that can take on that risk. So we can play in what does the metaverse look like, and we can buy every single headset when it becomes available just to see what it's like. And that in itself is another reason for Click Studios. I think we have every single headset. It's ridiculous. And if we're not using them, they might as well be in a facility where someone else can access them. So we're able to kind of offset some of that risk and play around in that space. But yeah, headsets come out, I feel like, every other week at the moment.
Yeah, that's true. You should really come visit the HIT Lab. We just recently opened our museum of HMDs. So if you walk down the aisle, you see a lot.
Yeah. I wonder if I can add some to it. Have you got, like, yeah.
Pretty sure. Pretty sure.
We have a headset wall that's just old headsets hanging along the wall.
Well, we can't challenge us. We don't have that many. I like the next question, though, that links a bit to this, is like in your presentation, you talked a lot about the the risks that you were taking and the things that they were exploring and the pivots that you called. But you talked in the end about the solutions and the successes, but you always mentioned you need to take the risk and you need to embrace the failure as well, because otherwise you're not innovating enough.
Yep.
So what were the biggest failures or most memorable failures that you encountered in all these projects?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's things like, for us, it's hardware risk. That's always, like, when you're a startup, that was always the pain point. So for example, when we started, the first thing I needed to buy was a handheld stabilizer, which was about $30,000, which at the time, to a 21-year-old, was your kind of start of your house deposit, and to your parents was the start of your house deposit. So to spend that on something that no one even wanted was my first taste of what a sleepless night looks like. And then you're all in. So then you're making sure you get that return on that investment. And 30,000 now to us is almost comical, because we've got 6 Nokia Ozos and they were $100,000 each, and we don't even use them anymore. We have jaunt cameras that we haven't taken out of the box in years because we don't need them anymore. We have headsets that we haven't touched in years, and it's just something that we build into our business model, which is like, we're going to have to fail at X amount of purchases this year to get to the ones that we actually need to get to. So that's one part of it. The other part is the stress that comes from R&D projects and your clients needing timelines. So I think the thing you most fail at is delivering to a timeline on a project that has never been done before. So what you become really good at is communicating that over and over and over again to a client, and never saying, yep, this is going to be done within this amount of time, if there is any element of it that is R&D, because you are almost jinxing yourself from the beginning. So deliverables on time, almost always a huge failure when it is the first time we've ever done anything. That fireproof VR system, that was number 11 of the different systems we tried that just melted. So it's
just wondering about that one, how many different cameras you have for that.
Our cyber scanning system was, I think it's around 250,000 that we've invested in that now, and we're on version 2 now, which is a lot more streamlined. But yeah, I mean, you guys, when I do a presentation, I show you the success. You don't so much see the journey to get there.
Okay. Mark Billinger has asked what advice you would have for universities that would like to collaborate with you in the future, or work more closely with industry in general.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I think the first step is just knowing each other. So knowing you can pick up the phone and talk to each other about projects you have coming up. We do feel a little bit like we have to force it sometimes to make sure that we are all communicating to each other. I'm grateful about the New Zealand landscape in the sense that, like, I mean, I have Mark's phone number and I have your phone number, you know, like call you guys if we have something. I work with Mark once a month to run the AR/VR meetup in New Zealand, so like, we're very close. So we can easily solve problems quickly. And if Mark, I remember a couple of years ago, he needed a little 360 camera and we just happened to have one. So it's that type of like leaning on each other. That's just like your first step. But I'm hoping that we can do more co-placement, like where we can have more students working on their projects within companies, so that they're actually sitting within industry and seeing what the actual job looks like at the end, from like a day in the life. Yep,
that makes sense. Yeah, you first need to, we are still human after all, and it's very important to establish relations so that we can really trust each other and work together.
That's something else I haven't solved yet, which maybe I should pose to Mark later on, is when we have solved something, how we make sure we all tell each other about it so we don't try and solve the same thing twice.
Yeah. Well, this is mainly what this conference is about, that you learn what others have solved, that you don't have to do it again. But yeah, sometimes you're working on something and nobody knows about it. Tord Froland asks, are you working on any multiplayer educational game projects at the moment? So, and what would be your thoughts on providing a good cooperative learning experience through games?
Yeah, I mean, we have a few on the go at the moment that require either a second person in the experience or the trainer in the experience with the person. And the industries that those are currently coming from at the moment is one is forensics. So there's a couple of things we're working on in that space. One of them was a blood splatter analysis training. So being able to practice analyzing blood splatter and working out where it came from and what instrument was used, how to collect evidence, practice collecting evidence from a crime scene. So it's anything that you make a mistake and the outcome can be terrible. And also first responder training, so like police training, and putting multiple people within those systems, and military as well. There's a couple of use cases in that space where it's teamwork is part of the training, so you need to be able to have multiple people in that space. So to answer the question, yes, we're playing around in that space. We don't have anything commercially available yet, but we have seen the importance of having multiple people simulating a scenario all at the same time, because that is more real. That is more what the real world will be like. And human error is a really important thing. If someone makes a mistake, as they do in the real world, how do you continue onwards knowing that has happened? Or how do you watch out for that mistake? I don't think you can do that with simulated characters. I think you need real people to be making those mistakes.
Yeah, otherwise it becomes too obvious, probably.
Yeah.
But an interesting field. So I started my augmented reality endeavor working with the Netherlands forensics team. So looking also at blood spatter analysis and these kind of things.
Nice. Yeah. Maybe we're trying to solve the same problem.
For me, it was not training, it was life support in augmented reality. So, but yeah, kind of close. I think we basically run out of time, but there's about 3 questions left, and I think everyone is interested to hear those answers as well. So are you fine if I continue for a few minutes?
Yep.
Okay. So next question would be, what kind of software as a service solutions do you actually offer? What are examples for that?
Yeah, so we have a couple at the moment. We haven't even launched our new website yet. So if you go to our website now, it looks like we're a marketing agency, which is we haven't been for years. So clearly we need to update that. But what we have at the moment is we have an aviation maintenance trainer. So training maintenance engineers on how to work around aircraft without having to ground those aircraft. Aviation firefighting, so firefighting for both cabin crew and ground crew around airlines. We have a working at heights simulator, working underground, and I feel like there's another one I've forgotten. Oh, and a exposure therapy. This one is available. It's called Remedies, which is for kids that need to undergo radiation therapy, MRI or CT. And it's used as an exposure therapy so that they are less likely to need to be sedated for the actual experience.
Okay, thank you. Jacob actually is asking when you will open a Click Studio branch in Wellington.
Well, watch the space.
Watch the space, okay.
If I was going to give you a timeline on it, I would say 6 months.
Okay. And as a final question, perhaps from Mark again, what advice would you have for a small startup in the AR/VR space who are going to trying to get started with lots of demands on their time?
Yeah, I would leverage the likes of Click Studios or other AR/VR companies. They're very collaborative in New Zealand, and I would leverage their hardware so that you don't have to buy any hardware, and I would invest in your people.
Okay.
You borrow and steal your hardware because it's everywhere. You ask and people will give it to you, and invest in your time and more in your team. And that's really what the Click Studios brand is supposed to do as well.
Okay. I think that's a great advice. Yeah. Well, Aliesha, what can I say? I think if I look at the Discord channel that we have here and what I'm getting messages on my phone in parallel, I think everyone really, really enjoyed your keynote. Thank you for being with us and sharing your story. I think it was really awesome. Thank you very much for this. And I think you're all set up for your keynote tomorrow morning with the 43,000 people. That sounds incredible, but the virtual world makes things possible. So good luck with this. And I hope to stay in touch, and I hope that you also stay in touch with the IEEE VR community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.